SadBoi here with a Shorty.
Shorty!
And today we're discussing the new HBO series Velma. I had no interest in watching the show, but after seeing how awful it looked in the trailer, I decided I just had to see if it was actually that bad. And yeah, it is pretty bad. I was surprised that I did actually end up laughing a couple of times during the first episodes, but they were small laughs, and there were a lot more awful cringy moments that definitely set the tone that this show is terrible. I'm gonna just lightly touch on some basics with the show that I didn't think were very good, and then at the end of the video I'm gonna get into what I think they really got wrong. The first thing that I'd like to say is the animation in this show is very low quality. It feels cheap and uninspired. It's such a generic design and execution. Velma looks like it was produced by a small production company. I've seen better animations made by indie creators online. The look and design was unimpressive, and there was something about the movement and motion of everything that just felt kind of off. The motion of everything in the show is very clunky and spastic. The animation in Velma has some serious low-budget energy, and there is the chance that this could have been intentional. I think what they might have been doing is trying to imitate the low quality of the original Scooby-Doo. Or it could be that they were trying to keep the cost of production as low as possible. And considering that the show is a soulless corporate cash grab, I would guess that that is probably much more likely. The plot's interesting enough. I personally don't really know how you'd go about making a more interesting story with Scooby-Doo characters in high school. Pretty much the main focus of it is that Velma has visions, she has these very powerful hallucinations of monsters and ghouls, and she wants to solve mysteries. And one of these mysteries is that there is a murderer going around killing women and cutting out their brains. The show starts off by introducing this plot with a whole meta fight, where Daphne and another character are naked in the locker room and they're having a fight over the concept of using nudity in the beginning of a show to kind of hook viewers. And personally, I'm just done with meta commentary in shows. There's nothing witty or clever about having your characters acknowledge that they're in a show or talk about show tropes and cliches. Seriously, can we please stop having characters that are so aware that they are characters? Deadpool and Rick and Morty are enough. We're good. We don't need characters that talk about things like, oh, the last act, or the plot, or oh, in the next episode, or viewers at home. It's not smart and funny, it's just lazy. Having your characters know that they're in a show and talking about the story structure doesn't mean that your show is smarter than other shows. Being self-aware doesn't mean the show is entertaining. And considering that this was just the first 2 episodes of the show, I'm sure they're going to keep doing it. Also, in addition to this meta style, they have Velma overusing this referential style of genre commentary. But this entire time, it's just unclear what show or movie they're referencing. And the way that they do the writing, it's just always kind of like, yeah, that's right, I'm a woman of color that doesn't fill in the blank. But what show or movie made this very specific rule that you say that you're breaking? She's always referring to these rules for stories and characters, and they're normally rooted in, the race of the character or the sex and gender of the character, but I have no idea what it is that you're alluding to. For a reference joke to work, people have to get the reference. They also, for some reason, feel like they needed to say that Fred never started the group and he never designed all the traps, that it was actually all Velma, and she never got the credit that she deserved. And I get that you're establishing a new world for these characters where Velma's the hero and the main character, but I just felt like it was kind of weird to go back and rewrite the history of the show like that. And it's not like I care about Scooby-Doo lore. I mean, who would? But I didn't get why this was needed. You could have just told the story without that part, and it wouldn't have seemed as spiteful, which is really the greatest issue with the show. There is so much venom in the voice. I don't get why the show had so much anger in its message, or why it needs to aggressively attack its source material. And what I can't stand about this malicious tone and delivery is that it validates a typically stupid complaint. The show caught a lot of heat online before it even released because they altered the race of multiple characters. Velma's Indian, Daphne is Asian, and Shaggy, or Norville as they call him in this, is black. And that's great. Creating representation is always a good thing. Especially with fictional characters, because who the fuck cares what race Velma from Scooby-Doo is? Seriously, that is such a non-issue. But what's so weird about it is the show has this very vindictive tone towards white people, especially white men. Velma's just a very hateful character. She is full of this generalized disdain for all white people, and also pretty much all men, with the exception of Norville. And even with him, she's pretty shitty. And to accompany this narrative, they took Fred, a character that was always just a kind person, and they made him the fucking worst. He's a rich, shallow, spoiled, racist, sexist baby that has these tantrums. It's fine that you didn't want Fred to be the main character of the story, and that you wanted to retell it with Velma being in charge. But did you have to make Fred into the worst person you possibly could? And on top of that, he has this hormonal issue where he hasn't hit puberty and developed. So the characters make fun of him for having a small dick. And apparently body shaming is just fine, but it has to be directed at a white man. Bullying characters about their penis size is a very just annoying, immature norm in our society, and it can be really damaging for men. It's dated, it's hateful, and it can be harmful. This version of Fred has plenty of legitimately terrible traits to attack, so why go after him for a health issue? It's a very painful insecurity for him, and it's something about his body that he can't control. Considering the fact that there are people out there that actually have similar health issues, for them, watching at home, it could be really upsetting to see that they are being judged because of a health issue which society has apparently deemed just totally appropriate to bash. And because of his insecurity, he doesn't want to have sex with his girlfriend. Velma ends up assuming that Fred is gay because it's just so weird that a man wouldn't want to have sex. Like shit, I don't know, maybe he's just not ready, or there are religious reasons at play. No, it must be that he's in the closet because it's impossible for a man to not be ready to have sex. And you know, changing the race of characters isn't in itself a problem, but when you look at how they left just Fred white and then they demonize him, or make assumptions about him and mock his body for being underdeveloped, in combination with Velma's constant shitty comments about white people and men, it does feel like the show has kind of a weird message, or like there's some sort of an agenda at play, which makes the whole show feel illegitimate, like it's not really an actual attempt at creating diversity. The show kind of feels like you're watching an alt-right impression of what a woke Scooby-Doo would be. Like if Turning Point produced a parody of a diverse rewrite of Scooby-Doo, this is what you would get. Which sucks because Velma is inadvertently hurting progress. If you're trying to sell that diversity is good, then portray it as something that is beneficial to the quality of a show. Lifting people up never requires tearing others down. You don't have to body shame people or invalidate other people's existence or experience to assert the value of your own. The poor reception that this show has received is possibly going to hurt future efforts in creating diversity because producers may conflate diversity with this bullshit. It may come across that audiences hate shows that focus on representation, when in reality, it's just a garbage show. Apparently, this is the lowest rated HBO title ever on IMDb, which isn't that surprising considering it's the worst HBO show I've ever seen. I have to admit that I am a little bit curious about this show, mostly because I want to see if they manage to pull out of this nosedive. And I mean, I don't think it will. Plus, the whole thing feels like hate watch bait. Like, they intentionally made this really bad and very divisive to try to drive engagement. And while I do love bad TV and movies, I can't stand media that's intentionally bad. So I guess we'll see what happens. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and go to my Patreon if you want to give me some money.